Welcome to Readdress Culture, the podcast where we delve into fascinating topics that shape our world. I am your host, Running Deer, and today we have a very special guest joining us. Please give a warm welcome to Michael Norris, a metaphysics teacher who has been captivating audiences with his insightful content on TikTok. And now here he is on Readdress Culture to share even more in-depth details about the intriguing field of metaphysics. Get ready to expand your mind and explore the profound layers of existence as we dive into this enlightening conversation with Michael Norris. Welcome in, Michael. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent. I'm having a really good day.
That's great. I see that you're traveling, and you can always tell us where you're headed to or not, but just tell us a little bit about your background and who you are, Michael.
Yeah, well, I'm currently on my way to Louisiana on a healing trip, and I had amnesia most of my life, so I only just got my memories back the last few years. Yeah, so that's part of my background. A big part of it is I didn't have an identity for most of my life. And then about 3.5 years ago, I all of a sudden started getting memories coming back out of nowhere. And they were full of all kinds of esoteric knowledge. It was really interesting. It was a pretty wild experience.
Oh, wow. Well, dive into it more if you want to. Take us down that road of these insightful memories that came flooding back to you.
Well, I had a unique father who gave me a very unique education. And everything he taught me was what came flooding back into my head all of a sudden. After I got my memories back, I ended up separating from my family and out on my own studying and working because I was compulsively trying to write everything down. I couldn't take care of my family. I couldn't do anything other than write all the stuff down that was flooding into my head. And that's the content that you see on my TikTok now, is the stuff that came rushing back with all the memories. One of the most interesting parts that I remembered that I've been studying, that we communicate using words, and each word that I'm saying to you right now is being instantly compared to every other word that you've ever heard in your life. That's how you know that this is the first time you're hearing me say this. You know that instantly, even precognitively. So that means words are permanent. They stay with us permanently. And I came to the conclusion that it isn't necessarily our brain that is interpreting these words, but an electromagnetic field. Because if our voice was just sound waves, we wouldn't be able to convey emotion or intent or any of the other complex dynamics that come along with each word that we use. And these words we use are interpreted with both our brain and our heart. Our brain interprets the logical side of the word, its definition, and our heart feels the antonym. And that's where the electromagnetic field is generated from, the magnetism of the heart and the electricity of the brain. And, again, that each word we're using, it's only possible to recognize it as being different from every other word if it was being filtered through a field first. So essentially, we don't think with our brains. We use an electromagnetic force. We have sound waves which only dissipate, somehow go into your ear and then get transmuted into electrical signals. However, that's conveying emotion and intent and either a positive, a negative, or a neutral charge. So, yeah, each word, we instantly observe and identify it as different from every other word that we've ever observed. We do that so fast, it's impossible for it to actually be a brain.
And before I get into the question, I want to make sure I'm following you. You're saying that these words are pulled from a field that we're all connected to. And do we get to choose these words that are flowing to us, or does this field just feed words and wherever you're at is the words you get? Because it sounds like you're saying the words define everything we do and who we are, which, philosophical ancient teachings even say those same things, that your words are your tongue is your most powerful tool. So with that being said, are you in line with what I say? We come from language. It is language that makes up humans, period. And everything that's existing it comes from a language.
That is almost exactly what I'm saying. What I figured out is that just exactly the same way we eat food, we consume words. They go through a digestive process. And we literally eat words. I mean, they start out metaphysical. The words coming out of my mouth are metaphysical. They are transmuted into physical reality inside of your body. As soon as, even if you choose to ignore what I'm saying, if you ignore a word, that's an action taken on it. And as soon as you've taken an action on a word, it becomes a part of your flesh. So the words stay inside of our body permanently. They don't really go anywhere. So yeah, it's just like food goes from physical to metaphysical, our words go from metaphysical to physical. That's the exact counterpoint or opposite that is prerequisite for either one to exist.
So where do these words come from outside of the energy field? Do we feed it new information, new words? Because I mean, all these words we speak, obviously, since the beginning of time has changed. So are we feeding, or does the magnetic field that we're pulling them from feeding us new words? I mean, how do you learn new languages if it all comes from a field and not from you?
Yeah, the field is literally one of the most sophisticated forces in existence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the reason why when we look at science, science describes this electromagnetic field as a weak field. They very specifically call it a weak field. And that's really misleading. If you could trick somebody out of a really sophisticated electromagnetic field and get them to believe that they use their ear holes and only their ear holes, that would be a really clever plan to take over the world. Yeah, so
go ahead.
So yeah, it's really sophisticated. We can use it both ways. It's got using a real-time feedback loop. That's how we're able to get everything instantly and even precognitively, like our intuition and all of that. It has to be something outside of us. It can't be from inside of us,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. So dive into this loop of intuition and how people are cycling on this loop that is happening in their life every day with language.
So they have used the words to manipulate our minds completely in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe a lot of the teachers are aware of it, but the words have been misused. Mm-hmm. We were not told that they were permanent. They told us that our words are just sound waves, which is really ridiculous. So now we have an entire world. And I just figured this out the other day. I had to go apologize to my ex-girlfriend because I didn't realize that words are permanent. But we were not taught that in school. They did not teach us that the words are permanent. And they stay with us forever. And that's how we know one word is new and we've never heard it before by comparing it to every other word that we've ever heard.
So let me gather my thoughts here on this one, because I have so many questions about how the language stays in the body. So does it tie my beliefs and my point of view, it ties itself to an emotional response or chemical, and that's my thoughts. But I want to hear how you know that it's permanently within our body and how it stays there. And if it's permanent, you're saying that we can never get rid of. So are you saying that we cannot change our reality because of these permanent words?
Well, what I'm referring to when I say permanent is a resonance imprint. It leaves an imprint on the resonance. So they almost like leaving a scar or a residue. And we excrete words just the same as we would excrete food. We forget them sometimes. We don't process them at all. Some of them, just like food running down your chin if you're a messy eater. Sometimes the words don't become part of you because they don't have any value. So they're either positive, negative, or neutral, and they're just like food. They could be toxic or nourishing.
They all stay with you in some sort of permanent mark within your vessel, not your actual energy source. Or does it stay with your energy source as well and travels on with you to the next energy plane that you're on?
Yes, it does stay with you. The soul is part of the digestion process. It's where the nourishment goes. And that's why we can hear words that will move us down to our very soul.
So what resonates with your truth and your energy, because I said that on my previous podcast. So yeah, I'm totally in line with that. And in the belief of, like you have to find what resonates. The only difference is that I have a hard time thinking that the energy that I have here in this physical, not the metaphysical, but in this physical experience, that I'm going to take it with me, like karma. It's almost like it's referring to the karmic path of, karmic lives, and whatever I retain here carries on to the next physical realm. So you're saying that it's along that path of, you're going to take it and adhere it and take it with you in all of your energy.
I believe that the word is forever. It never goes away. I think that, again, that would it would line up with being tricked when they told us that our voice and our words just dissipate into sound waves, mm-hmm. into the next place, because our metaphysical presence is bigger than our physical presence. It's got more force, and it's everything that we do. The word is enduring. Each word we use stays forever. Even when I leave this world, my words will be left behind with whoever has heard them or observed them.
So if energy, we take this with our energy to the next level or plane, because energy is always moving forward. Where is the energy that we brought with us? Is this the beginning of the planes, of the physical realities that are lived, this physical body as a human body, and then we move forward? But where is the language? If not, where is that language? What we learned prior?
I think the first 4 words ever spoken had to have been "Let there be light," because we're always coming, going, doing, and being. And again, we're doing 4 things at all times. Mm-hmm. And that would make sense that something was able to compel light into existence with the spoken word, because intent is a part of the word. Any word we use carries intent, and that intent can have effects on whatever object it's directed at. Mm-hmm. So that's again, electromagnetic force is one of the most sophisticated forms of energy we know of, and that's why it's got so many dynamics that it's from the beginning and the end. It stays forever.
I wonder why, when we come into this physical experience that we're all in currently, living this collective story, why is it that we cannot remember the energy language that we learned prior to being here? And if we are able to retain it and bring it here, how do we access it?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I haven't got that far in my research yet. I need to look into that myself. That's part of the reason I'm on a healing journey right now. I feel like I still have some blockages and some things I need to learn so that I can get into the details more and understand my past lives.
So, like the Akashic Records is what you're seeking on this healing journey, so you can go deeper into who you were prior to this life. Okay?
Yeah.
And then, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of the Akashic Records, and that sounds a lot like where my memory came from.
It is definitely a conversation, and different books are written on it. And I can give you a couple of books that are by different types of authors. So one type used to have a Christian or a Catholic background, and the other type had more of a quantum fields background. I believe she studied under Dr. Joseph Dispenza. I don't know if you know who he is. So as one of his students wrote a book on the Akashic Records as well. And I can always, outside of this podcast, give you those book recommendations. But I'm so happy to hear that you're on this healing journey. So the amnesia, was this like the rest of us, where we're walking through life unaware of the things outside of ourselves that make up the world? Or was this...
Yeah, it was. I was very thoroughly indoctrinated and institutionalized.
I got you.
I identified by my first name at the time, which is Nathaniel, mm-hmm. and I was a criminal living in the dark my whole life. And I was totally unaware. I didn't care about anything outside of my arm's reach. But yeah, I didn't really have an identity. I was trying to identify as everything I could find other than myself, until I decided to go by my middle name again, because I was brainwashed as a child. It was a very aggressive brainwashing, but it was counselors actually that were at school, because our family was being terrorized in what was a high-profile hate crime. There was a prison guard who was leaving threatening messages on our answer machine and stuff like that. So we lived in fear when I was a child. So we lived scared, and that's when my dad would teach us. Mm-hmm. That's when he gave me my education, and he did that to keep us from being scared. So after things settled down. In order for my dad to be able to sue, they had to send me to counselors. And he wasn't able to litigate. The system did what they do. Mm-hmm. But they sent me these counselors who made me believe that it was my fault that I kept getting beat up in school, and made me believe that if I shaved my afro off, then I wouldn't draw so much attention to myself. Yeah, so it was aggressive brainwashing, because when they told me to forget about it and stop talking about it, I did. Mm-hmm. I was scared. I didn't want to get beat up anymore. So that's the difference between regular brainwashing and aggressive brainwashing. Is the aggressive kind uses physical violence for reinforcement. And I forgot everything. I forgot what my dad taught me. I forgot that whole half of my life just went into the void. And yeah, so and it was really strange, because my dad changed my name. He changed the letters in my first name, and he stopped calling me by my middle name, which is Michael. He used to call me Michael as a term of endearment. And when I started getting rebellious, he stopped calling me that and started calling me by my first name, which was absolutely flooring for me. It literally dropped me down to the floor. It crushed me. I was so upset. But That change is what started the end of my memories, I guess. And for 20, 22 years, I didn't know until just a few years ago.
Oh, wow. It seems that that is a lot of stories where you were or in total brainwashed, and how like there has been this group of elites or people that knew things for what it was, and instead of sharing, they're supposed to on this realm, they've taken and hoarded the information so they could live in luxury while the rest of the people work. And it sounds like this is still happening to everyone, even in modern day brainwashing. And I want to delve into how you said on TikTok the ticking of the clock and how they use certain words like describe. So let's dig into the TikTok of the clock and how that helps brainwash.
So the clock is independent of itself, just like our beating heart. It's our heart's beating on its own. And that's the first thing we learned in school was how to tell time. And that was for a reason. They separated the letters from the numbers and taught us to tell time with a clock and a teacher. Now that again, that affects us in two ways. The teacher affects our mind directly, and the clock speaks directly to the heart. That's why it's got all of our emotions tied to it. We get stressed out when we're late, stuff like that. But yeah, so my dad taught me when I was a kid. He said, you can't pay attention to what they're teaching you in school because it's not going to keep you alive when you get home. So I was always learning in school from the outside. It took me a long time to learn how to read a clock. And it was because those are tools for brainwashing. The elites who have taken everything use the clock and a teacher as the basic formula for brainwashing. You have to get the heart and the brain manipulated. And that's what they did. They got both of them. That's the electric and the magnetic part, totally manipulated. So the heart is magnetic and the mind is electric. And that's how they were able to manipulate us out of our electromagnetic energy, is using a clock and a teacher.
So should we throw all of clocks away in the world right now? Should that be like something we stop? Because these clocks are on our phone, on our wrist now. They're in our pockets. It's just a constant tick-a-tock, even though you don't hear the sound anymore. And I use clocks in meditation because the sound is soothing for people, and they get used to that tick-tock. So now I'm wondering if that is something I need to be taking out of my meditation classes, the ticking of the clock, because I don't want to brainwash anyone. I want to bring people to their own awareness. And I'm wondering if what you're saying needs to be tested in my own classes. So thank you.
So the world was conquered time and time again to the sound of drums. So I would replace a clock with a drum and let a drum do the tapping, or even a click, just something that would click. But yeah, come to think of it, I would imagine that the clocks were only just industrialized in the mid 1800s. Mm-hmm. Okay, there was a time when we didn't live with clocks in this world, and that was the time when you saw all of those really intricately designed cathedrals and stuff like that. Imagine working on your art project or working on whatever you're doing and never ever having to answer to a time or a clock. Imagine how much you would get done. How much would you get done?
So much. The clock puts so much pressure on who you are and your ability, because then you're thinking about the time and you're not thinking about what you're doing. And you're like, and it's just like at work or something. You think about the clock ticking slower the closer you get to going home, and how slow it seems to be going. So that even adds pressure of, God, I just want out of here. Whatever people say, I need out of here. This clock is moving slow. The clock is very destructive to humans.
Yeah, so they really tricked us good with the whole linear time, teaching us that time goes in a straight line. Because when you're having fun, when you're doing something you really enjoy, there's no such thing as time. If you're playing, I've played video games before, and I'd get so into my game that 5 hours would pass by. Next thing I know, I'm really hungry and I got to use the bathroom.
I do that with books.
Yeah. So that, I mean, we're not supposed to be subject to time. That's how time is supposed to feel all the time. We didn't develop this anxiety with the clock until around 7 years old. That's when we really started to develop, and everything that we were taught in school built on that development. It was structured around developing our anxiety around the clock. So yeah, that is one of the primary tools for brainwashing. Now in your practice and what you do, you may still need to use it because of the effects of what people are already under. And that would be the best way to relate to them, because that's just the nature of their circumstances.
Yeah. I get you.
Yeah. So yeah, it is the clock that causes the majority of our problems.
Because you all feel the pressure of that ticking, whether you're watching a show when you got something to do, or you got to go to school, or you got to go to work. Like the alarm clock, the way you wake up now isn't with the sun in your eyes and allowing your brain to wake up naturally. It's by the alarm clock. And sometimes I get up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I get up before the roosters crow, and I do that naturally. I don't have a clock by my bed, and I don't keep my phone by my bed either, because I don't want that distraction. So people, if they are listening still, please listen to this. Let go of your clock and rewire your brain, is what Michael's saying. You've got to get out of the ticking of that clock. Yesterday, we were talking about the ticking of the clock and how they reprogrammed us. But let's go ahead and dive into your perspective on language.
So words, as we know them, have four parts. Okay, they refer to a thought, a feeling, and they have a meaning and a purpose. So these four things get interpolated when we observe a word. They are both electric and magnetic. The magnetic at the heart and electric in the mind. So our words, again, they're using electromagnetic force to communicate. That's the way that we are able to communicate instantly. But more than that, again, because in school we were told that this is just sound waves we're using to communicate, which is illogical. The words that we're using, each word that's coming out of my mouth right now, is actually transmitting a linguistic meaning and emotional resonance, a historical and cultural context, and phonetic vibration. It's got the speaker's intention is with it, and it has personal association with whoever's observing the word. And there's universal significance as well as energetic frequency and spatial and temporal resonance. All these things are coming out in just one word instantly.
Oh, wow, that's like mind blowing how much is behind each word we speak. Wow.
That happens instantly. That happens instantly, all of it. And again, this is what I was talking about when I said that sound wave couldn't do that. That's just pretty ridiculous. It has to be electromagnetic force. It's the only thing sophisticated enough to convey that sort of information instantly, almost precognitively.
Now, you were saying yesterday that every word you speak imprints onto your soul. So go ahead and dive into that for me.
So there's in that sense, there's a whole 7 different steps to how we consume words, because our words go from metaphysical to physical, just like the food we eat goes from physical to metaphysical energy. So they're the exact counterpoint and exact opposite of each other. Now, when we start digesting words, which is what we do, we literally consume words, and they go into our bodies and more or less become flesh if we act on them in any way. So there's 7 different steps to digesting a word. It starts with the inherent knowledge that's in it, and then there's the reality of its resonance. It's got intuitive understanding or bypassing cognition. It can bypass your cognition if it resonates with you. There's emotional frequency, decoding intent, and universal memory. There's also multidimensional processing and interpolation of the present context. So all of that stuff happens to break a word down to our emotions. It'll give us certain feelings and certain emotions, and it'll trigger certain thoughts. So again, the words are always doing 4 things. There's a thought, a feeling, a meaning, and a purpose. And our heart being magnetic and our mind electric, that's how the resonation works. They work like just exactly like a couple of word processors. So the words we process, like I said, they become part of our emotions. And especially when we act on them, they literally become flesh, and they're permanent. As I'm speaking to you right now, every word that you're hearing is being instantly compared to every other word you've ever heard in your life. And that's how you know whether this is the first or second time you're hearing me say this. And you know it instantly as soon as you hear the words. So that's the beginning of the process of digestion.
Wow. It amazes me because we have so similar of views when it comes to language. And so I'm very fascinated with language, not just the words we speak, but where they come from, not just in etymology or origin or anything like that, where we physically spoke it, but where the language came from. And, the energy source that keeps pouring the language. So let me ask you this. If language comes from this force field outside of ourselves and outside of our body and the body of the earth as well, because it seems like this is coming beyond the physical of everything we know, right? And this goes beyond the galaxies even, because there's a starting point for everything. I'm wondering though, if language itself is the creator.
It almost has to be.
Yeah, I mean, because even animals have language and a way of communication. insects, all of them have. And that's what ties us to everything on a physical level here, that I believe. And I don't know if you have that same sense, but it's just like everything communicates. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all a language, whether it's body language, a sound that you hear, if it's ASL or BSL, you have to have this form of communication. So it makes me wonder if the beginning started, and as you said earlier, the first word spoken was "let there be light," right?
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me think of, in order for that to be spoken, the language had to come through thought and process and then be spoke, like you said, digested, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So our words are alive. Essentially, we're eating living words.
They're
That
alive?
well, yeah, that's again that would be how your creator was made if you think about it. For your
Mm-hmm.
creator to exist, in the beginning was the word. Again, this is a little bit religious, but in the beginning was the word, and the word was God. But that there's something to that. As like most things with that have been stolen by religion, there's something to that. There's something to be said about the sentient nature of words, because when we observe one and it goes into our body, especially if we act on it, it has now become a part of us. It leaves a residue, a resonance, resonance residue. It
Mm-hmm.
leaves a mark, a residual mark after it leaves. Because we'll forget a word, and it's just the same as excretion. We lose words just as much as we eat them. We have to process them fully. It's a full process.
Well, let's backtrack on the word religion. Now, I know you broke down words, several, on your
Hmm.
content, and I believe it was you that broke down the word religion and how those two, the re and religion, and how, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but how the word religion in itself is not constructive towards us. And it is, in a way, I don't want to say destructive, because I know how you are about that word "d" and
Hmm.
then the word behind it. But do you get what I'm saying, where it like tears us down? So for me, what you're quoting is, in my point of view, philosophical. Eastern religions, or ways of life, was all
Hmm.
philosophical stories left so you could learn, because no one, like Dick Gregory says, the universe gives you glasses, you can never take them off, and you
Yeah.
can never force somebody else to wear them, and you can never give them away, right? So that's
Hmm.
why it came in philosophical stories. So because they couldn't force their view on people, but this was their view when they looked at it from an above look, right? So you're
Yeah.
not quoting religion to me, you're quoting a philosophical story that told us from their point of view without impinging on our point of view what it
Hmm.
could have been for them, right? So I just wanted to touch base on that, because it's so important, the words that you were breaking down for people, and how you even lined it up with numerology and the numerical, because we've gotten away from the numerical part of words. And in America, we have 26 letters in our alphabet, right? Is it 26? I don't know. It's been a long time since school. But I'm just curious what your view is on our language versus any other language.
So our language, in a lot of ways, sounds like it's more dishonest. It has to be spoken with awareness of its antonyms. And
Mm-hmm.
that's more or less the equivalent of speaking the Omega language, or the language of truth. If you are aware of the antonyms of the word, because your heart observes the antonym where your mind will observe its root word, or vice versa, depending on how it resonates. Again, the heart and the brain are word processors, and we don't just observe the words with our ears, we're actually experiencing the words. They go all the way into and resonate with our whole body magnetically and electrically. But yeah, so the words, let's see. Can you repeat the question again?
What is your point of view on the language we speak now, English, because it's the most
Oh, in
complicated?
other languages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in other languages, because the etymology shows you where language came from. So where did it cross, with
Yes.
English?
I, I think that it was the 1800s. I believe it was the 1800s when they started meddling around with synonyms and antonyms, because our words are only confusing because they have so many synonyms. The word schizophrenic alone has 70 plus synonyms.
No,
That's
I'm
all the
looking that up.
Yeah, yeah,
One sec.
it's got about 70 plus synonyms. There's a lot of words that have more antonyms than they do synonyms.
Hmm.
And that can give the word a negative connotation, or a different sort of connotation than what's intended. So our language got really confusing when they started adding a bunch of words that mean the same thing. It's sinister and slick, and all the S words, because it's the same thing. It's trickery. So many words do that, which makes our language a lot different from other languages. Other languages use the male and female energy, the divine feminine and the masculine, and they communicate with both of them intact. We don't do that. We speak spells.
Wow. I'm glad you brought up the feminine and the masculine, because that is very important. And the Hermetics had taught that in their own philosophy, that our language is in our creations is both feminine and masculine, not in the feminine and masculine that people see each other as, but on a physical level. But there's a feminine side and a masculine side. So I believe, or my point of view is, that when they took our language out of their native tongues and changed it, right? And if you can follow, if they took the languages and changed it and took away the feminine and masculine to dumb down everyone, because as you said, it wasn't until the 1800s they really started playing with the language, right? It wasn't until the 1800s everyone was forced to go to school, because the industrial sediment was set into the storyline. And so, like, delve into whatever else you want to go. But this is interesting. Now you got me like looking up all sentiments, especially on like schizophrenic, because I just had a topic about how those people are quite skilled. They can see multiple planes at the same time. I don't think that they're crazy. I think that if everything is mental, they can see multiple planes. But now I gotta go see what else they're defining them as. So thank you for that.
There's pattern recognition that comes along with it. And that's why, for me, it's easier for me to pick out the synonyms and antonyms. But researching, I recommend using Merriam-Webster's thesaurus. And then, because that one has a really good layout for finding antonyms. It's color-coded and everything. So you can actually feel the words popping out at you. But the beginning of all synonyms and the beginning of all antonyms would be a good place to start, because it's kind of reverse from what I observed when I was looking it up on the internet. The antonyms were created apparently after the synonyms. And it was some sort of literary combat that was happening between, I believe, a woman and somebody who was running the words. Somebody who was making the words, a male word maker. Guys who controlled the printing press, ones who were determining what's going to be public and what's not going to be public. The same ones who organized the school system, the really wealthy ones that had control over the words. Imagine having control over words. If you could convince somebody that they're just hearing sound waves that are floating through the air, instead of, hey, you have a sophisticated electromagnetic field that picks up words in a real-time feedback loop, then you wouldn't be able to lie to them as easily. If you could trick them to thinking their ears were the only way that they're hearing words, then you could trick them into anything. We got tricked out of our own ears with the whole sound waves business.
So you are in belief and point of view, perception, that someone has played the game against all the rest of humanity. So they uphold power against the rest of us and keep us down by creating amnesia, as you said yourself, that you had because they had programmed you to fall in line a certain way. And then it's almost, and I spoke with my husband about this, as they're programming you through TV, and they're programming you through the music you listen to, and you sing the same song that told your story from old to new and back to old again. And you're constantly living that vicious cycle, because it's not even just the sound that comes out of it. It is like this wave of energy that they're sending, that they send this wave of energy that dissipates your own thinking, ability to think for yourself. And I'm just stating that I'm following you 100%, that this is all programming, and that this is causing people to have amnesia and go to work and do what they said and when they say it. And as you said, if they can trick you, but here's the deal, are they tricking everyone? They're telling them the truth, but then calling it crazy, right? Calling the ones that are telling the truth crazy, and then saying what they're saying, which is actually crazy, the truth. So people really need to start thinking about that. So enlighten me more about metaphysics and how people can change their language. Do they defer from using or refrain from using English at all because it doesn't have that masculine and feminine energy behind it? Or
English it can be used in beautiful ways. Some great poetry has come out in English, and to make poetry out of a cursed language is an extraordinary talent. So the English language isn't inherently bad by itself. It's just got all the potential for being bad. The language itself is spoken is like I said, the first 4 words that were ever really spoken in this language were "Let there be light," and that's how everything was really more or less compelled into existence. But I'm sorry, could you repeat the question again?
recall asking, I'm sorry, just one moment. Let's pause it so my brain can think of the question.
All right. So once we actually have awareness of what the words are doing, when
Mm-hmm.
we're aware that they're electromagnetic, both magnetic in the heart and electric in the mind, because that's one of the things that we were tricked out of, is we were taught to believe that our mind is the only way that we're interpreting the words, that there's some electrical signal in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
And being misguided that way, that's the trick that was pulled. So that's how we were tricked out of our own ears by being taught about these sound waves. So as far as getting away from using the negative connotations of the words, it comes down to a matter of awareness, just being aware of the antonyms, being aware that you're feeling these words with your heart. You're not just thinking about them. They come with a thought, a feeling, a meaning, and a purpose, which interestingly, each one of those four words is a 7-character word. And we as people represent seven. We're coming, going, doing, being, hearing, seeing, and speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So when we observe 7-letter words, we're subconsciously seeing seven, because our subconscious mind is always counting. It's
Mm-hmm.
always counting and listening for rhymes. It always wants to hear something familiar. And that's our feelings. Literally, you can think of your subconscious mind as your feelings themselves, because they do things intuitively. We avoid certain words intuitively. Certain words, we won't even observe them intuitively. Yet that's all something that's done with the heart and its magnetic force.
Mm-hmm.
So again, awareness of these words and their antonyms, to know the opposite of a word, can make you choose a different word in a different scenario. I talked about the word describe. It
Mm-hmm.
means to devalue, detach, and degrade. That's one that I'm still working on. I have a hard time not saying I'm going to describe something, because I've been describing everything my whole life.
So, what is a word that you could use in place of describe?
Explain.
Explain.
Yeah,
So,
explain. An explanation could take days, and a description just takes a label.
okay. Is there any other words that people need to be wary of or made more aware of what they're using on the daily that you know of right now that could be of help? And what a word could be replaced by or
Okay.
with?
The word routine
Mm-hmm.
is a sinister occult word. It has the word rote in it and the word rot. And we observe both of those words. Rote is a bad word. Rote is a 4-letter word,
Okay.
and it means to literally engage in pointless, monotonous work, to be doing nothing maliciously.
Oh,
It's
wow.
it's a really bad word. It's a bad 4-letter word. I use it to swear all the time. I say wrote this and wrote that. But yeah, it's just rote, and it's synonymous with rot as well. It's got rot as a cousin. So we're observing these words anytime we have a routine. It's better off to go with activities, or a more specific identification of whatever the task is going to be. If you're going frisbee golfing, I would just go frisbee golfing. I wouldn't call it part of my routine golf game. So yeah, I really try to avoid the word routine, because it's got 7 synonyms that are all no good.
What about habit? Is habit a word? Like I hear like you got to have healthy habits, habit, and how you have bad habits, good habits. Is habit a word that we need to be aware of? Since
It
routine
sounds
doesn't sound like it would have been a word, but it clearly is.
yeah. It sounds like it should be another 5-letter word, but it sounds like it should be a 4-letter word, because habits tend to have negative connotations associated with it. Anytime I think of somebody with a habit, first thing I think of is somebody who's a smoker or something, and they have a habit. It's their habit, and that word it's got negative connotations. I haven't actually researched its antonyms myself, but I'll have to look that up and put it on my list of ones to look up, because that does sound interesting. It's right up there with addiction, and I think some of these words are used out of context, and they end up getting a bad connotation. But yeah, habits right there with routine.
I was to say it's so familiar to routine that you would think that it would be a synonym for it, correct?
Yeah.
But I have no idea. I'm not looking at it, and I'm not an English major or anything, so I don't want to misstep and say it is. But please continue with the list of wording or any words that you know.
Oh yeah. So one of the words that I brought up in one of my other videos was sapiocide, and sapiocide is the extermination of human awareness, and it exterminates human awareness and wisdom, and that's what we see evident in all of the psychiatric treatment. The DSM that the psychiatrists use
Mm-hmm.
is literally a list of conditions that are natural reactions that have been commercialized. They've got a list of conditions with natural reactions, and they call them all a condition and say that there's something wrong with you because you're having a natural reaction to stimulus. And that's what the whole DSM is. It's a commercialization of our thoughts and feelings, because when we go to a psychiatrist, they're perpetrating sapiocide. As soon as they put a label on you of any kind, they've just stifled your 7 things at all times. And we could go from being 7 things to all of a sudden being a schizophrenic. And we have this one thing. and that's the only thing we have, then our thoughts and our feelings are focused on that, because that's the first thing they want. They want to know, they want you to describe your thoughts and feelings. And when you do that, you're literally giving them your thoughts and feelings and letting them tell you what to do with them.
No way. So
It,
you're saying that someone that is a schizophrenic person per a diagnosis might have not been anything but the 7 until they got that diagnosis, because they described themselves or their situation over to the psychiatrist or someone else did for them. And that's basically, you're saying the word describe gives other people permission to take those words that you're saying after you describe it, right? And use it against you and change it. So when you're describing or giving a description of anything, you're giving permission, or you're giving your free will to create over to someone else and
what
becoming
you're
one
doing
thing.
is you're giving inversion. That's literally giving inversion. So it's an inversion of your thoughts and feelings. Yeah, it's being inverted into somebody else, like a mirror. It's like having a light that reflects and refracts off a mirror. So yeah, somebody is sticking a mirror in front of our light and using the words to do it. That's
Boom. That's mind blowing, because then that makes you think about how much you sit there and share with people and describe your situation and tell them. And you're not even realizing that you're describing something, because it has been your amnesia from before has kicked in and you're just going about how they told you. That's why you should stop bitching to your friends about your problems.
yeah. Yep.
Wow. Because then, I mean, have you ever realized the conversation that you have with your friend, and one friend gives you advice, and you've had this conversation with 2 friends and they both give you advice, but you can only take it from one? I feel like you've resonated with that friend more, not that you like them differently or more than the other. It's just you resonated with one and the other one was trying to tear you down, right? They took it and used it against you, is what you're saying. They had bad thoughts about the whole situation and where they thought it could be better or something. Wow. I'm not telling none of my friends none of my business no more. Like, y'all heifers can find it out on the internet like Hollywood.
Yep.
Wow. My
Yeah.
mind
So
is blown with that.
yeah, description is heavy. It's a heavy word. It devalues, detaches, and degrades. And again, each of those 3 words has a lot of wild synonyms. They're all it's a web. It's a word web or a word tapestry. And if we consider our words formula instead of a linear line of speech, then we can communicate more effectively. That's part of more or less speaking the language of truth, is putting together combinations of words according to the correct grouping and the correct antonyms. When you use word formula to communicate, then you actually add the numbers to them as well. You count the characters. You make sure you keep account of how many characters you have, because your subconscious mind is influenced by those numbers. And you see a 7-letter word, it's more comforting, it's more effective, it has more going on for it. We speak with more 7-letter words than any other word in the language. We keep making up 7-letter words so that they have words to influence our subconscious that we are not aware of. But that's what
Wow.
7 does. Yeah, 7 directly interferes with the subconscious, it makes you feel the number.
Wow. I want to look up really quickly. So we're just going to do this. So I did speak right. It's 26 letters in the English alphabet. That's 1 letter off from being 3 times 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's 9 numbers. Well, there's 10, because 0 is still a number. It's still a round, and 8 is double 0, right? But there are 9 numbers on the scale. So give us the formula so we can start breaking down. Do you know the formula yet? Have you got that far in your research? What is the formula if you have?
I haven't made a mathematical formula. Like I said, I use word formulas.
Okay.
So the words can just usually end up happening to have corresponding character counts. When I find words that have corresponding character counts, then I can see patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Then things start to line up and it makes sense. So the words are quadratic. Like I said, they're all doing 4 things, and each of those 4 things has a 7 character count.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thought, a feeling, a meaning, and a purpose. So again, it's a massive equation. I haven't actually written out an actual formula for it yet. I've written out the words for it. So I haven't made mathematic symbols yet. I'm waiting to get together with somebody who has a good comprehensive understanding of all of those different types of symbols,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can construct a readable, workable formula in what you would call scientific language. Because again, one of the first things they did in school was separate the numbers from the words. That's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing they did to us, so that we don't associate the two, except that's all that we're supposed to do. Each word comes with a character value, and that character value influences the subconscious. That's why psychiatry uses a lot of 9-letter words instead of 7-letter words, because those 9-letter words will supersede the 7-letter character count. And in our mind, we're aware of it subconsciously, but not consciously. So, yeah, a lot of words in psychiatry are 9-letter words. I wish I wrote some of them down because there were a few that I wrote down that were, I made a video on my content on TikTok about that.
Well,
And
hey,
it
that's
has,
where people can go and find it, though.
yeah, yeah.
Don't wish that you had it. We just sent them all there to TikTok
Okay.
so they can get that formula.
Because yeah, it's on there. I wrote it down. It's really just quadratic. It's all looking. It starts with looking for the fours. The four things that come out of a word right away, at least in written paper. But yeah, once you identify the meaning, the purpose, the thought, and the feeling, and then it's a workable formula for yourself. Awareness does the work for you. It really comes down to awareness because it's a supercomputer. It's electromagnetic force, or what people would call ether. That awareness transmutes all of this information from words to the electromagnetic force of our voice. So we're using sophisticated mechanisms when we communicate that are passing back and forth with massive amounts of information. Huge. I mean, enough that they literally take up physical mass in a big way. And we call it metaphysical. You can't see it.
Wow.
And we're always touching it because as sure as I'm sitting here right now, I wouldn't be sitting here in this physical body unless there was metaphysical force pressing against me, keeping me in this physical body and in this form that I'm in. So the metaphysical presses against the physical. You feel it every time you walk into a room and the lighting changes and your whole body tingles. And you get the whole, the full body sensation of the light changing for some reason. That's physical. That's more physical than being punched in the face. It changes the blood flow in your body. And if you can make blood move, that's as physical as it gets. If your blood is moving, it's doing something physical. So that means words can do the same thing. Words can change the blood flow in your entire body. And yeah, all it takes is one or two words to go through the largest organ of the body, which is through the skin, to give you goosebumps, and that could change your entire blood flow with just a word. So that's really physical. The metaphysical and the physical come together perfectly. They're always pressing against each other. So anything metaphysical has its physical counterpart. Just like I said, the words go from metaphysical to physical, and the food we eat goes from physical to metaphysical. So it has to have its counterpart, its opposite pressing against it. The balance is there.
Wow. This is just such an interesting topic. Is there anything in metaphysical that you want to share with people other than language and what we have discussed so far? Is there anything else on this topic that you would like to expand on and let people know what you know?
Yeah, like I said, lately a lot of my research has been about identifying this electromagnetic field that we use. And it's come to my attention that a lot of what we call thinking is there's evidence of a real-time feedback loop. And if there was anything I would take away from this, it would be that we are actually consuming our words. If I wanted to share anything with anybody, that would be the most important thing that I could possibly talk about, because our words are permanent. They stay with us. And even when they're gone, they leave a mark, a residual mark. And I had to go apologize to my ex-girlfriend when I found this out, because I was under the impression that my words are just sound waves and they just dissipate into the air. I didn't realize that they were permanent, that they affected at least 10 different dimensions as they travel through the air. Literally, there's 10 of them. I listed, but they go through these 10 dimensions, and words, we extrapolate a meaning and a purpose and interpolate a thought and a feeling. So yeah, there's at least 7 different dimensions, 10 dimensions that are being interpreted, and 7 that are being interpolated, or a 7-step process for digestion. That to me is a big deal. As we were told that our words just dissipate. And when I found out, like I said, when I found out that these words are permanent, they stay inside of us and they're always doing something, they're living with us like an unwanted roommate. I was so embarrassed, I had to call my ex-girlfriend and apologize to her. I had to tell her, look, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have used the words that I did. I did not realize that they were permanent and that they stay with you. So yeah, if there was anything important that I could share, it's that I've come to the conclusion that there's evidence that we keep our words, literally, they stay with us. And that each word I'm using is being instantly compared to every other word you've ever heard, which is, evidence of a real-time feedback loop, because it doesn't make any sense for the words to have to go into our ear hole and then get converted into electricity and then be interpreted through the brain in 10 different ways simultaneously. I don't think a piece of organic flesh could do that, no matter how advanced it is. That could only be electromagnetic energy, because that's the only energy sophisticated enough to carry such advanced and complex information as like the word speaker's intent. It carries that with it. It carries emotions. It carries thoughts. It carries meaning and purpose. And all of this stuff, it's got multiple dimensions. It even applies to universal dimensions. You can speak a word and multiple different people can hear it in different realities.
Oh, wow. I was writing a book, and I had been writing it for a while, 10 years, just stuck. And the universe sent me a message, and I heard it one night say, be careful what you're writing, because you're writing either your story or someone else's story. And it's the same with words that you speak. Be careful what you're speaking, because you're not only speaking you could be speaking the next self of you story, the next version of who you are. And that's what you're saying. The words you're saying affects not just your plane you're on, but the next version of you on the next plane. And you really decide. And the whole looping back and forth, what I'm hearing you say is they stay with you, and you can decipher which words you've heard and have not heard before. But you also can torture yourself with the words that are already planted in you and hear them over and over again. And self-negative talk is a huge thing, especially in America, because we have so much negative energy here. This entire country was built on a negative energy and on lies, on top of lies. And so I don't know if I'd want to encourage people to, because there is evolvement in everything we do, and everything evolves. So language in itself has evolved. It's just being careful with the words that has been carefully thought out in place for you to use that works against you. That's important here. And that I believe I'm following you along. I wanted to clearly understand and speak out loud the way I'm interpreting what you're saying, so you could correct me on your point of view if I'm getting it wrong.
I really appreciate that. Some good paraphrasing is outstanding communication skills. To be able to paraphrase somebody like that, that's really important. It lets me know that I'm speaking coherently. But yeah, because it is pretty heavy to talk about, especially when you think about going from speaking with airwaves to speaking with electromagnetic force. Knowing that you have this sophisticated force that's been taken away from you can cause some dissonance, instead of resonance. And when that electromagnetic field dissonates, and when you feel dissonance, it's really uncomfortable. That's the sensation we get. Our whole field is compromised. I like to think of us exactly no different than algorithms. We are made up of numbers. And we've got hyper-adaptive external parameters and infinitely adaptive introspection, just like a good algorithm. So we adapt to everything and absorb everything. If we had, hyper-adaptive parameters. So as light force, I don't see us as being much different than an algorithm in the numbers, zeros and ones, a whole bunch of zeros and ones. Because if you stick your finger in one little part of that algorithm and mess up one single number, you can turn the whole thing around and mess the whole thing up. Because it's all, zeros and ones.
Oh, wow. So I want to touch on two bases here. You keep saying electromagnetic field, and it always makes me come to this question: are we being played with through our devices and electronics? And I've seen people recently coming up with like these headgear that blocks the waves that come from your phones, because they've done studies on the brain where like so much exposure to your own phone up to your ear or electronics in your face give like these negative wavelengths and change the color and algorithm of your own waves, right, in your brain. And so when they put this gear on, it settles the brain down, and the waves in the brain can function as it's supposed to. So I'm wondering if you're on the same as me, that they could be playing with everyone through these wavelengths, because the CIA has done so much, and the FBI, et cetera, on all of these like testing of how they can make a protester depressed and suicidal just by, a wavelength being sent per their phone. Now they can send it per their phone. So your words are important because they're electromagnetic, but also reframing from having this phone up to your head or near you. That's why I don't sleep with my phone near my bed. I'm just like, I don't want that pulsating all night, keeping my brain, the physical part that's supposed to be resting, up and active still, because I feel like they can mess with you that way as well. I don't know.
I don't think it's actually the brain at all. I think that's part of the information we've been given, because again, the CIA and these people control 100% of absolutely everything that we know categorically. So if we hear something that seems positive or logical, it was very likely given to us to distract us from in some kind of way. So anytime I hear about research of any kind, I always wonder who was getting paid and what they were actually researching. So I believe it is the heart, because if you influence somebody's feelings, their emotions, you influence how they act, because our emotions control our actions. We're not supposed to act on our emotions all the time. We're not supposed to, according to behavioral problems, but we do act because of how we feel. It's our feelings that make us act and make us move. So if they could send a wave that would manipulate our emotions, our heart directly, then I believe that's the more likely scenario of what's being messed with as far as sending signals and waves, because they don't tell us about the magnetic part. They don't talk about that. and it's a different magnetic frequency than we're used to with regular magnets. Obviously, the phone isn't magnetized, but that's one thing, But yeah, I think it would be the resonance in the heart that's being messed with. You know, that would explain some of the random heart attacks and stuff that people have.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the frequency is being messed with in the heart because they don't put any information out there about anything ever being used for any type of weapon like that. You hardly even see it in the movies. They don't show anything about a weapon that directly influences the heart through magnetic force.
And it goes back to the question of, are they telling us the truth and we're blocking it out? Because this is whistleblowers, the ones that worked in those departments that came out and blew the whistle on how they were doing these mental mind games to try to control people. And mind you, I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but I always double check and look into things, because you can get trapped in so many rabbit holes of different theories. So I wanted to touch base on that because you started talking about the electromagnetic field and how I had seen that and how whistleblowers confirmed prior to me seeing that. And then afterwards, I researched and I seen, yeah, they have been doing different types of mind things throughout research to try to control, and try to manhandle us. And the other thing, I'm going to try to remember, Michael. I cannot remember that.
The truth. It's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only other thing I wanted to talk about was the truth. And it's been weaponized against us. Somebody has taken the truth itself and used it as leverage. We have been robbed of our truth, our moral fortitude. I talked about with the clock and the teacher. That's what they took from us, was the morality of our mind and the fortitude of our feelings. The teacher is self-evident like thoughts, and our feelings are independent of themselves like the clock. So they used a teacher and a clock to strip us of our moral fortitude because we depend on that clock just like we depend on our beating heart, and we depend on the teacher just like we depend on our thoughts.
Oh wow!
We need the teacher to tell us what to do because we need to know what time we were supposed to do everything. That's our moral fortitude. That's where it went. That's how it got taken away. We were never ever supposed to separate ourselves from time. Separating ourselves from time is what caused all the problems. Once we got separated from time, we got separated from the truth. That's the one element that makes us who we are and what we're going to be and everything that we do.
Because in philosophy, the ancient teachings, those people lived hundreds of years. Some of them a couple of 100, 300. Some kings and queens were living centuries. So I get what you're saying. Like people did die of diseases and stuff. And I do believe that, a lot of that was just the earth cleaning herself. And we have tried to outrace the earth and her cleaning herself. And now we're like into this, I don't know, I don't want to call it an end time, but I know Mother Earth has had enough. But that's my own, roots talking. But my point of it all is, you're right. When we separated from time, we started to die as well. Immediately started to decay and rot from the inside out. From the inside out, like you're rotting. Your body's like healthy, but you're rotting from the inside because like all of these negative things are happening.
We're being fed the wrong words.
I need you to get a whole list of the right words and like come back here and tell us all what you've researched. I'm a teacher in yoga and meditation, so here I am giving you homework.
I need it.
Come back because we need this language to counteract the language that was put in, because we can awaken so many more people if they heard the right words from the right person at the right time. It's all about the frequency we're all sitting at, and we're all made from different frequencies from the same source. So that's my belief, and the reason why some people resonate with you more than the next person, because you're more similar in frequency or near each other's frequency more. But I believe that you can also change your frequencies in your language by simply learning and conversing and collaborating. So I can't wait for you to come back with this list, man, of these are the words that you're using right now, and this is what you need to replace it with. And, really go like, God, that just
I'm grateful for the homework, because I get sidetracked when I'm studying if I don't have a homework assignment and a plan in front of me. So yeah, I'm actually really grateful for the homework because it gives me something to do, something to focus on, and a task at hand. So I always look forward to hunting words. That's what I do. I spend a lot of time hunting and studying words and their dynamics, and not just their grammar, but the entirety of them and holistically examining the words for what they're doing and where they came from. Because again, like you said, there's formulas for all of this. Somebody knows these formulas. Some muffin rubbing body knows them exactly.
Muffin rubbing. Love it. I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, if I could figure some of this out, then I can, exactly like you said, put together some combinations of words, some word formulas that will literally wake people up. Like enough words that somebody could have seizures if they just hear the right words and start waking up. There's the correct ones are out there. I know they are, because all the wrong ones have been used. We've literally told every combination of every lie possible that could ever be possibly told. We've taken every word from the whole English language and put it in every combination that could be the wrong combination, and we did every one categorically, all of them. All the numbers are used up. We used up all the words, literally. We've used up the words. There's none left. That's part of why when everybody had their awakening and they looked around, everything kind of seemed like yes, like everything. That's because we reached the end of all lies. Mathematically, it's inevitable. And I'm not even much of a math person. I'm really not. I just happen to get hung up on 7, which is a nice prime number, and I'm really good at 7ing things. So, yeah, there's no more lies left to tell. So it's only a matter of finding the right words, finding the good ones, because all the lies have been told. They used them up. Metaphysically, a lie in a word makes force. It's pressure on objects. So our words come out metaphysically, putting pressure on things. It takes up space. It's going to take up so much space to where inevitably the truth itself will be manifest in reality, in physical reality instead of metaphysical reality. And then nothing will have any truth in it anymore, if that makes any sense.
No, it all makes sense.
Wow. So we've used all the lies possible, just describing everything. Our descriptions. Anything we didn't lie about, we directly described it, and science made us describe everything. We look and see and decide and describe. That's the scientific process: is look, see, describe, decide. All 4 of those words are separate. They separate you from things. Now, the actual learning process should be sense, experience, know, then act. Yeah, it would be sense, experience, know, and act is the appropriate or proper way for us to learn stuff, because that way we're involving our heart and not just our mind like we were taught to. Because that, once again, that's the misleading trick, is that everything is your brain and everything is your mind, and it's mind control. They took control of the heart. That's what they got control of. They took the heart, and that's the fortitude. They took the moral fortitude away, and we don't see it anywhere in society now. The truth got literally taken away and covered up. Wow. The ultimate objective truth.
Wow. Well, Michael, today and yesterday has been so enlightening and so wonderful to have you on. I was so excited to have you come here and enlighten us about the metaphysical, about language. And yes, we are saying that language evolves. And we have been saying the wrong words because we were taught the wrong words. Back in the 1800s, they decided to build the industrial world, and they needed us all to stop meandering the land and create babies so they could make money. So at the end of the day, Michael, I appreciate you being here, fully sharing. And any books that you have to share?
There's a book written by Ellis Taylor about the alphabet. It's called the alphabet numbers, I believe. But it's easy to find. If you look up Ellis Taylor's books, it'll stick out at you, because it literally is a book that puts the numbers to the letters. And it does it in some sort of, in a more correct fashion than what I would do, because I do mine freestyle and freehand and just go for it.
And is there any final thoughts that you want to give before we move on?
That'll be it for today. I could say is true righteousness is only manifest in the shadow of profound wrongdoing. Take that with you.
All right. Well, you heard it all first here on Readdress Culture with our guest, Michael Norris. And you can always follow Michael on TikTok, where he gives plenty of content for you to digest and use in your everyday life. Well, that's a wrap. Another mind-blowing episode of Readdress Culture. I hope you've enjoyed the metaphysical journey with our incredible guest, Michael Norris. Remember, folks, when it comes to understanding the mysteries of the universe, don't be afraid to let your mind wander and question the status quo. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing the wonders of metaphysics. And as always, stay curious, stay kind, and keep readdressing our culture. Until next time, this is Running Deer, signing off with a cosmic wink and a cosmic high five. If you found this episode insightful or thought-provoking, please subscribe and rate. We deeply value your feedback. And if you know of someone that would love to be on our podcast, Readdress Culture, please reach out to us and send an email to our contact at readdressculture.com. That email is contact@readdressculture.com.